Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to talk a little bit more about the difference between belief structures and belief levels. And the reason why I want to talk about this today is because when I was going back and analyzing all of the different manifestation processes that I had practiced up until that point, and also went back and studied all of the spiritual teachers and compared them to my past experiences with my successful manifestations and my unsuccessful manifestations, I felt very discombobulated with this realm or this category of belief. Because we hear it all the time, belief is very important when it comes to manifesting. We know that we don't get what we want, we get what we believe. If you want to change your reality, you have to change your beliefs. We have these very popular spiritual teachers like Neville Goddard, for instance, who are saying things like, and I quote, "Man must learn to believe in that which he does not at the moment see in order to grant himself that which he desires to have. Man's prayers are always answered, for he always receives that which he believes. The law that governs prayer is impersonal. Belief is the condition necessary to realize the desire. No amount of pleas or ritual will bring about the fulfillment of your desire other than the belief that you are or have that which you want." And then we had other spiritual teachers like Abraham Hicks say, and I quote, "It is that you do not allow because you do not believe. What you believe regarding anything that you want is extremely important, for you will allow only within the boundaries of your beliefs. And so in many cases, your beliefs must be altered to harmonize with your intentions." And lastly, we have Bashar saying, and again, I quote, "Belief systems are the blueprint that leads to emotions, thoughts, and behaviors that creates your experience in reality." And those are just a couple examples of some of the more popular spiritual teachers and the importance that they put on this idea or on this concept of belief. So going into this realm of belief, I knew that belief was important. But again, I didn't feel like I knew how to apply belief because there were some manifestations where I was just saying a string of words until it manifested in physical reality. And then there's other times where I did create a high level of expectation of my manifestations. And then there's other times where I persisted for a very long length of time and I still didn't get my manifestation. But one thing I will say when it came to my past experiences was when I went back and analyzed them, I did realize that I did have a belief in something. It may not have been the manifestation, but if I didn't believe in the manifestation, I usually believed that the process itself would bring me my manifestation. So for example, when it came to robotic affirmations, I really resonated with this idea of just needing to saturate my subconscious mind until it manifested in the screen of space. And so all I needed to do was persist. I didn't necessarily need to believe what I was saying, I just needed to persist. And then that would get me what I wanted. So I had the belief that as long as I persisted, I would get what I wanted. So again, these experiences more than anything just reinforce this knowing that belief was important on some level. And at this particular point in my life, I was very determined to find a way to create a system where all of these different experiences could coexist. I was trying to find a way to somehow integrate them all into one greater understanding, with the goal of not only unifying these processes, but also unifying my past experiences. So I didn't necessarily have to reject a specific process. And I knew that belief was important to the process in some way, but like I said, I didn't really feel like I knew how to apply belief. Because on one hand, I would get manifestations where I didn't necessarily believe in the manifestation, but other times I did have a strong belief in manifesting something and I did get it. And then there's other times where I didn't believe in the manifestation and I didn't get the manifestation. And at the same time of me analyzing all these past experiences, I was actually very much researching Bashar specifically. And the reason why was just because he resonated with me a lot during this particular time period. Now, when I study a source, I don't just study what the source is saying, I also study how the source is saying it. I like to study not only the way that the information is presented, but I also like to study, the language that's being used to present that information and the different types of vocab that's being used. And so the first four things that I noticed almost immediately about Bashar was, first, right off the bat, I noticed that he never actually made you feel or even said that you need to believe what I'm saying or you need to believe that your manifestation is going to happen, which was actually a massive relief for me at the time, because at this point I was coming out of this idea of needing to saturate my subconscious mind with affirmations, and I was actually doing a lot of research on Neville. And as we know with Neville, he's very passionate about how he says things, and he's all about, claiming a desire. And even with the quote I said earlier in the video, he says, belief is the condition necessary to realize the desire. No amount of pleas or ritual will bring about the fulfillment of your desires other than the belief that you are or have which you want, which seemed very different than how Bashar was presenting the information. If anything, in a lot of Bashar's channels, he actually says, you don't have to believe us, you don't have to do what we tell you to do. And not only that, but the second thing that really resonated with me with Bashar was actually his description of what our human mind is responsible for and what our higher mind is responsible for. And so one of the things he says about our linear mind, or our human mind as he likes to call it, is that it's only designed to experience the here and the now, the present moment. It's not designed to do anything else. And so when I heard that piece of information, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes, like a lot of sense, because there were some manifestations where no matter how much I tried to convince myself that my manifestation was going to happen, it was like I got this unrelenting kickback from my physical mind that was like, it is not here. So like, for example, let's say that I was trying to manifest becoming a millionaire or something like that. I would be like, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire. And every time I would say I'm a millionaire, it was like my linear mind was like, no, you're not, no, you're not, no, you're not. And the only reason why this was happening is because it was doing its job, because it was only designed to observe and experience the right now, the here and now. And if I didn't have my manifestation in that physical reality, it was just doing its job saying like, it's not here. That's not what's happening right now. You're trying to tell me it's happening right now, but it's not happening right now. And so that was another thing that felt like relief. I realized that I wasn't just doing this manifestation process myself. And before this, I knew about, the universe delivers your desire, God delivers your desires and everything. But one thing I realized when hearing and understanding this information about my higher mind versus my linear mind or my human mind was realizing that my human mind or my linear mind was under the impression of thinking that it needed to do the actual manifestation part of the process, when in reality, it was only designed to do the here and now, observe the here and now, perceive the here and now. My higher mind was responsible for delivering the manifestation to me. So that was the second thing I noticed about Bashar. And the third thing I noticed about him almost immediately was actually how he used the words prefer and don't prefer rather than want and don't want. And at this particular point, I was basically binge watching like all these videos with Bashar. I just noticed very consistently, he only ever uses the words prefer or don't prefer rather than want and don't want. I later, it was a couple years later where I actually found a video of him explaining why he doesn't use the word want. And it turns out it's because he says that our ego mind can sometimes interpret this, basically create false wants based off of fear-based beliefs. Like the ego basically creates this idea or thinks that it wants something that it doesn't actually want because it's scared of something or because it has a fear-based belief. And lastly, the other thing that I really liked about Bashar, or at least very much noticed at this time when I was doing massive research on him, was basically, if you watch Bashar, you know this, but he is all about definitions and how definitions are basically how we create our reality. So with all of these realizations after doing a lot of research on Bashar, the first thing that I did was actually start looking up the definitions of a bunch of the words that I felt were not clear to me. And the first one I started off with was the word belief, which I ended up finding out has actually two definitions, which are, and again, I quote, 1, an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists, and 2, trust, faith, or confidence in someone or something. Now, after I read both of these definitions and realized that there was actually two definitions of belief, something clicked in me where I realized that all these different pieces of information and all of these sources, all of these spiritual gurus, they were all describing belief, but not necessarily clarifying the fact that we're talking about different categories of belief when we're sharing spiritual teachings about belief. And these two categories are what I like to call belief structures and belief levels, with the definition of belief structures being an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists, and belief levels as trust, faith, or confidence in someone or something. And with these belief levels, I very much associated them with when Bashar would talk about realities in their potentiality or their possibility, which I'm going to explain a little bit more in just a second. So when looking at these belief structures, these are basically the things that create paradigms and identities. For example, if you have the belief that the sun is going to rise every morning, that's the paradigm that you are going to experience because you accept that statement or that reality, that paradigm as truth. Another example could be, let's say that you're trying to manifest your dream relationship, but let's say that you have this belief structure that all successful men cheat, or even let's say you have the belief structure that most successful men cheat. If you accept that statement as true or believe that statement to be true, then that's going to be the paradigm that you experience in physical reality. Now, this is all well said and good, but what about belief levels? What are these things exactly? The thing that really helped me understand this idea of belief levels was actually when Bashar was talking about different realities and more specifically parallel realities. But I want to read you a quote that made me kind of re-understand this idea of belief levels and their relevance for manifesting. And the quote is, "Your imagination is the archive of all your possible holograms. From this archive of possibilities, the version that you imagine, believe, or focus your imagination on is your currently selected version of reality." And it was actually that first part of the quote that really made it click for me, where he says, "Your imagination is the archive of all your possible holograms." After understanding and really digesting this idea that everything is here and now, and then reading that your imagination is this archive of all of your possible holograms, it made me understand that all I'm doing with my imagination is picking the reality that I want. And more specifically, I'm picking the possibility of what I want by focusing my attention on that very thing, on that very reality. In other words, all of these individual paradigms that are held together by belief structures are all possible holograms that you can pick from the right here and the right now, based on your own unique individual preference. Knowing and understanding that my human mind or my linear mind was only designed to experience and sense and observe the here and now, it made sense that I didn't necessarily need to make myself believe anything. I just had to pick from an infinite number of possibilities based on my own individual preference. In other words, I don't need to make my linear mind believe anything. I just need to pick a possibility that is based off of my own preference. And so basically what I created was, yet again, another diagram looking something like this, where here we have a reality right here, which is indicated by our state of consciousness, our state of being. The belief structure is the very thing that surrounds this reality. It's like the container that holds the reality in place, allowing us to experience it in physical reality. And with belief structures, we can have either favorable ones, which give us a favorable state of being, and therefore a favorable reality. And then we can have unfavorable ones, which give us an unfavorable state of being, aka an unfavorable reality. When it came to belief levels, I just understood that this reality was a possibility out of an infinite number of possibilities. And all I had to do with my linear mind was double check that I was in the realm of possibility, that I saw this reality as a possibility from my current present moment of the here and now. Another way I like to see realities is kind of like the masculine and feminine natures, with the masculine being the outer shell and the inner state of being or inner state of consciousness being the feminine. Eventually, I turned this into my own system where I created the knobs within my systems because I knew that I was always changing myself. So it was easier for me to understand that I'm changing my state of consciousness. And the way that came to me was kind of like turning these knobs within my system of making sure that I was picking the reality that I preferred. I was making sure that I was seeing it through the lens of possibility from the here and now, and also turning the knob of detachment or finding my own levels of security where, vibrationally speaking, I had my desire in my inner world, regardless of what was happening in my external reality. One way to think about this is starting off with the understanding that we are just awareness, putting our focus onto realities that we prefer in our imagination. And it's with our very much aligned focus on a particular reality that projects onto the screen of space. The first knob is indicated by preference. Do I even prefer this reality or do I not prefer this reality? Am I focusing on what I do prefer or what I don't prefer? The second knob is focused on a lens, or what I like to call the lens, which is the belief lens. Am I seeing this current reality through the lenses of impossibility or possibility? And lastly is my detachment knob, or like I like to call it, my security knob. Vibrationally speaking, do I have my desire or do I not have my desire? And I have several videos already on how I find my level of security. I'll link them above if you're curious on watching them. But essentially, the way I like to go about this reality selection process is understanding reality selection basically like that diagram, where I am awareness and I am putting my focus on a preferred reality and making sure that I'm seeing it through the lens of, yes, this is possible for me. And also making sure that my linear mind is not in an insecure state of being. I talk a lot about this idea of starting off from a pre-detached state of being. One of the ways that I have discovered is actually being in preference mode, again, very much using how Bashar talks, where he explains our wants as preference rather than wants. And if you look up the definition of want, there are several definitions if I remember correctly, but one of the definitions actually states that it implies a lack of sorts, which, as we know with the manifestation process, when we are starting off the process itself, we're usually in a state of lack where we notice some sort of lack in our physical reality. It's the point where we receive our desire. And so our goal is to pick the reality where we already have our desire. And so this idea of detachment is more so just making sure, vibrationally speaking, in your inner world, you have your manifestation, or at the very least, not resisting your current reality and therefore keeping it active in your experience. For me personally, this diagram explains it really well, or at least it helps me see and understand where to place my linear mind's attention with particular knobs to turn within my system. I truly see my awareness through my own eyesight. So for me, in my imagination, all I have to do is align my focus with the reality that I prefer and make sure that I'm seeing it through the lens of possibility and security, or having my manifestation, or starting off in preference mode, in other words. I actually created a video on what it means to be in alignment and what alignment even means. And this diagram is actually very similar to the diagram that I share in that video, with this idea of what you put your focus on is what you're going to get in physical reality. And you can focus on things in an infinite number of ways. You can focus it through the lens of impossibility, or you can focus it through the lens of impossibility. Same with attachment or detachment, which again, vibrationally is either I have or I don't have. Another way to see this is taking, again, that reality as a whole with the belief structure and basically running it through the process of, is this the reality that I prefer? Do I believe that this reality is possible for me? And am I in preference mode, or am I still in lack mode of this reality in my inner world? In the past, I have had experiences where repeating a new belief over and over eventually did yield evidence in my physical reality. But then there were some beliefs that no matter how much I persisted, my mind would just not accept them. And it was just my linear mind doing its job of perceiving the here and now and trying to keep me safe, basically. But my whole point in this is I do want to create a video that goes a little bit more in depth with more effective ways that I've found of changing belief structures. But to wrap this video up, I do want to share a couple ways that you can change belief structures. There are two specifically that I like to follow. There are obviously an infinite number of ways to change belief structures, but the two ways that I like to do them is, first, by picking the belief structure that you actually do prefer. So for example, let's go back to the original example of, let's say that you're trying to manifest your dream relationship and you have an unfavorable belief structure that all or most successful men cheat. One of the ways that I would handle this belief structure is by running it through the process of reality selection itself, understanding that you're going to be picking a different paradigm to be experiencing. So again, treating the new belief structure as a completely different reality that you will be experiencing, a completely different paradigm that you're going to be experiencing. So the way to do this is first understanding, okay, this is not the current reality that I prefer. This is not the paradigm that I prefer to experience. So what do I prefer? Let's say that the answer comes to you that you want to be in the paradigm where most, if not all, successful men are loyal and faithful. And you're like, yeah, no, that's the paradigm that I want to be in. I want to experience the reality where most successful men are loyal and faithful. So you have your preference down, you have your selection knob down, you have your paradigm down, right? The second thing you want to double check is just making sure that you are viewing it through the lens of possibility, from the right here and the right now. And all this means is that you believe that on some level that this reality is possible for you to experience, even if it's not happening right now. And the third thing you want to do is turn your detachment knob from attachment to detachment, which again is just making sure that you're in preference mode, or not in this desperation, graspy, I need this kind of mode. Because what desperation vibrationally implies is lack on the inside. You're still in step one of receiving your desire. And our goal with the manifestation process is to get to the point where our inner world has the manifestation so that it can project onto the screen of space. So that's the first way I like to change my belief structures. Now, there are some belief structures that I find sometimes a little bit more difficult, where even if I run it through the reality selection process, I still feel this level of insecurity when it comes to experiencing this belief for whatever reason. And there could be many reasons for this, but with those particular belief structures, I actually like to do what Bashar does, which is basically find ways to falsify the belief structure that I find unfavorable. Any belief structure that provides an unfavorable state of being is actually out of alignment with your true nature, with your true self. And so if you watch Bashar, he actually does a great job at using the logic for the unfavorable belief structure against itself. The biggest piece of advice I would give for this one is find ways to insert levels of doubt into the belief system that you find as unfavorable. And definitely check out Bashar's videos and watch how he uses the unfavorable belief structure against itself. For example, for people who say, oh, I lack trust, right? He's like, you don't lack trust. That's impossible. It's not that you lack trust, it's actually that you trust a lot in lack. Or people who come up to him and are like, I'm not confident. And he's like, no, you're confident. You're just confident in being not confident. You're very confident in that. So if you are struggling with some of those deeply ingrained, like kind of fear-based beliefs, start inserting levels of doubt into the belief structure, because the more doubt you insert into the belief structure, the more you're going to see it as completely false. And as Bashar says, it's not about trying to convince yourself of something you don't believe to be true. It's about letting go of the belief structure and getting back into alignment with your true vibrational self. Because our baggage weighs nothing. If we have a limiting belief, that means that we've picked it up somewhere along the way in our external world, and it's not for us. So it's more about letting go of the beliefs by falsifying them and embracing our true natural state, our true natural belief structures that weigh nothing. I wanted this video to be more of a first step way of organizing beliefs so that you can better apply them to your manifestation process. If you are or were ever confused about like how to handle belief, if you needed to believe that your manifestation was going to happen, or worrying that you had like limiting beliefs blocking your manifestation, I hope this video helped kind of clarify the fact that we're talking about two different categories of belief when looking at the information of beliefs. What I have found is that by organizing this information in this way, it actually provides a feeling of being able to better apply the information to the manifestation process itself. Just understand that belief structures are the things that hold realities together. Belief levels are more just seeing the reality that you prefer through the lens of possibility from the perspective of here and now. Again, keeping in mind that our linear mind, our human mind, was not designed to do anything other than experience right now, other than to give us the physical experience. So don't put the responsibility of the higher mind on the physical mind, all right? So I hope this video helped. Definitely let me know what you think about the video in the comments below. As always, I love hearing everyone's different perspectives, but that's all for now. Until next time, keep creating, everyone, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.